Welcome everyone to our Co-op Skillshare Owning Our Media with Subvert. And so let me talk a little bit about what this sort of program is about. So we have different educational programs at Cooperation STL. We are a group that's promoting awareness and education about cooperatives. We have cooperative foundations workshops where we cover basic topics like introductories to what co-ops are, about co-op conversions of regular businesses to co-ops and starting a new co-op, as well as topics like decision making, management and governance, all the sorts of things you would need to know about co-ops when you're starting, operating, or just learning more about them. So here we are our three facilitators for you today. My name is Chris Wilcox. My pronouns are he, him from Cooperation STL.
I'm Jenny. My pronouns are she, her. I'm also part of Co-op STL.
My name is Zandi Barrett. I'm part of Co-op STL. I use she, they pronouns, and I will be monitoring the chat today and popping things in there, so keep an eye on that.
Yep, I'd like to quickly introduce our guest, Austin Roby from Subvert. So let me go over how we'll be doing in our presentation today. So we will be briefly introducing the concept of co-ops and co-op values. We'll present Subvert's experience and expertise in managing a media co-op, and have a Q&A time for Austin to answer all audience questions. We might discuss possibilities with more media created and distributed by co-ops. Imagine how media might be more co-op driven. What we won't do today is give professional or financial advice or define a model that works for all types of co-ops, because co-ops are as diverse as the things that they do. So there's all kinds of models that are useful for making them work. So quickly, our community agreements. No one knows everything, but together we know a lot. Especially here in the Skillshare, we're all here to share our expertise in different things and help to make the whole better than the sum of its parts. We be curious and open. We speak from our own experience. We balance taking space and making space. We ask, why am I talking? If you're taking up space, or is this a point that you specifically need right now? Or are you restating something that someone else said? We can't be articulate all the time. Give the benefit of the doubt and ask questions. And confidentiality. Don't use specifics if you don't have permission or don't want to share them later. So we could do quick introductions for folks who are attending. You can type your name, group affiliation, if any, pronouns, and the last song or album you bought. Just some of our answers from oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go read them. That's what I was going to do.
Oh, read them. Yeah. Yeah, some of our answers we have from Austin, our guest, Turnstile, never enough. Smiling. Someone who doesn't know when they bought our last song or album, which, now we have a lot of recommendations of where we can do that from now on. Yeah, that Howdy True Love and used copy of Supertramp album. GNX, and Rashad the Blues Kid. So some our selection from guests today. So let's start off with what is a co-op. So a cooperative is a self-governing group of people who voluntarily work together to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. The three key concepts for cooperatives are that they are member-owned, they are member-controlled, and they are member-benefiting. And cooperatives operate on a series of principles, originally based on the Rochdale principles. These are also used today by the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops. They're voluntary and open membership, education, training, and information, autonomy and independence, democratic member control, concern for community, member economic participation, and cooperation among cooperatives. So the three we're focusing today, particularly on this Skillshare, are the education, training, and information. So sharing more about what people are doing with co-ops, autonomy and independence. Our guest is an example of how artists can own their own work and benefit from their own work. And cooperation among cooperatives. What's great about the Skillshare series is that we're sharing the experience of different cooperatives about how they make it work in the world today. And we're hoping that that allows us to learn from each other and present the cooperative movement as a whole. So why co-ops and media? So artists and creators are owning their own work and getting direct benefits. So most of us know, particularly in like the music industry, it's pretty exploitative. People often like don't have the ownership or the rights to their own work, especially in the music industry. It also allows you to present content that wouldn't be circulated due to constraints on advertisers and sponsors. There's a filtering effect with media where like certain perspectives, certain kinds of stories, certain kinds of music might not get circulation because it's at odds with advertisers, or there's different constraints that are put on different platforms that put things up on that share media with the world. And it's a way for developing a more diverse media environment with opportunities for small creators. So, especially if you're just starting out or you're a small group, it can be hard to have the kinds of capital and resources to be able to share your music and other art with other people in the world, especially if, this is the sort of thing that would be restricted by platforms or certain things that aren't shared as much by platforms. And you can also opt out of censorship, data and exploitation and surveillance. So, we know that our data is constantly being drawn from us as a commodity. It's being used to target those creepy, personalized ads that everyone gets and follows them around everywhere. And also, especially at a time like this, might be mindful of how different platforms can contribute to surveillance and silencing dissent uh, as we go along. So I'm going to do a quick audience check-in. So type in the chat, what co-ops have you interacted with? Some examples that, some not often people interact with co-ops without realizing it. So some common examples are like credit unions, grocery stores. Prairie Farms in Missouri is a local one. It's a producer co-op for dairy products. So if you've been to the grocery store and bought dairy products, you've probably gotten some of these. And, REI, despite, with the controversy about you being a customer co-op and might have heard about the issues with the union organizing there. Yeah. Give people a couple minutes to write their responses in the chat. Austin wishes he lived near a grocery co-op. Me too. Posited a check at St. Louis Community Credit Union. I mentioned they knew about REI, which maybe some people's first contact with cooperatives having heard about it. Buying butter of Land O'Lakes, cheese from Cabot. Yeah, purchasing from grocery store has co-ops like Prairie Farms in our case locally. Yeah. Cool. So this is participation based. We would like for folks to add their questions in the chat, and we can address them when the guest does their presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, just type them in. We'll record them and make sure they're addressed during the Q&A portion. So introduce our guest is Subvert. It's a Bandcamp successor that is cooperatively owned, controlled by its community of artists, labels, supporters, and workers.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Chris. So do we want to do the Q&A after
Yes.
the presentation? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Let me stop sharing so I can let you get your presentation up.
okay, cool. All right, can you see this?
I can.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to be talking about Subvert today. My name is Austin Roby. I'm one of the founders of Subvert, and we are building a collectively owned Bandcamp successor. Bandcamp is a music marketplace platform that was sold twice in the last 2 years and has left a lot of it's a highly engaged community of uh, an independent music ecosystem concerned to feeling insecure to feeling betrayed. And so what we are building is what I feel like is the only thing answer to this is to build something that we own and control together. So when it comes to media co-ops, we are thinking about the platform itself where you would host or sell media. So this is our homepage right now. We have we actually started in kind of a unique way because we haven't launched the platform yet. We're going to start onboarding people in the next few weeks. So we've been building it, but October of 2024, we published a site with the initial kind of essay, which was this essay called A Collectively Owned Bandcamp Successor. And we compiled this zine, which I'm showing my screen, so I don't know if you can see my thumbnail, but we compiled this 134 page zine. It's a full business plan, basically, on how we plan to do this. So for months before announcing anything, we got a plan down and packaged it as this stylized zine. And that became a way to build co-op membership before we launched the platform. So we set it up so that artists and labels can apply to join for free and then claim one of these zines and we would send it to them. Or if you're a supporter of the project, you could pay $100 and support. So right now we're up to 6,500 co-op members now. And the goal is at the 1 year anniversary, October of this year, open up the platform fully and ideally get to 10,000 members before then. And so, yeah, these are some of the questions that we've been asking. How can artists collectively own platforms? I feel like that extends broadly across different forms of cultural infrastructure. And beyond that, like what would an artist-owned alternative economy look like? So the problems in the platform world are just that platforms are not accountable to their communities. That these platforms are incredibly valuable, but they generate all that value from people actually selling art or uploading art. And so artists generate all this value, but don't actually capture any of it, don't have any say in how platforms are run. And if you've seen the recent news with Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, investing in hundreds of millions of dollars in AI weapons startups, AI drone weapons startups. That's a lot of people super upset being, just the idea that this is what money is being used for, that is being extracted from artists. And so what we have kind of seen so far has like this cycle of cynicism where there's some bad news that people get upset about. People voice that frustration online. There's a back and forth like about socializing about this shared frustration, and then we kind of just resign to it, and it just repeats. And so what I want Subvert to be is a contribution of some kind of constructive solution so we can stop doing this. Um, and there's been many examples recently of ownership causing deep frustrations within music specifically. So Boiler Room, which is a platform and a community events or an events platform that hosts uh, DJ sets around the world. Uh, they were sold, and workers recently posted this on Instagram about how Boiler Room had previously been acquired by Dice, the ticketing platform, and then Dice sold it to a group called Superstruct, who was owned by KKR, who also invests in military tech that is being actively deployed right now. And so, yeah, this brand that had like deep community goodwill, again, people feel like what is our activity actually contributing to? And it ends up boiling down to ownership. I mentioned this before about Spotify. If you look at that corporate governance, there are no artists on Spotify's board of directors. Like at the highest level of decision making, the only people that are represented are who you normally see on a publicly traded company board, which is like people that represent international global investment banks, like corporate cronies, and the founders. There's no representation of any kind of stakeholder interest at the highest level. So it makes sense why the decisions of the company feel so misaligned with the people actually um, engaging with it. So we made a parody of the Spotify Wrapped recently, where we showed a Wrapped of all the owners of Spotify, all the shares that they own, what those shares are worth, and how many approximate streams that would actually equate to. Which is funny because I think that Daniel X, like his ownership alone, if you were to calculate that into songs streamed, pretty much translates into listening to music before pre-recorded history. I think it would extend beyond the last ice age. Like that's basically what that ownership has become worth, or compared to what music has been valued at. And so all these are just like global investment banks. And Bandcamp was a platform that amongst all of this, people felt, well, at least we have Bandcamp. Like we have this platform that at least like has demonstrated an ability to act independent of investor interests. They've been profitable since very early on. And and it had incredible community goodwill. I mean, Bandcamp, their model is a marketplace platform. So like a place where artists and labels can directly sell digital or physical media. So that's like digital downloads of tracks or physical albums or physical merch. And what happened was Bandcamp, um, even with the founders saying, artists come first, like there's no intention to sell the company, they did. And so there was this blog post that just came out of nowhere, which said they were selling the company. They didn't say selling, they said joining, but they sold the company to Epic Games, which is the company that makes Fortnite. So a lot of people were like, wait, what? Some people still held out and saying, like, maybe this is a good thing, maybe the platform will improve, etc. But it was only like 6 or 8 months later that it was sold again. And so people were really upset. It was sold to a music licensing company in Santa Monica called Song Trader. And so, yeah, people were upset. They're like, this is our independent music store. Like, why is this becoming a like some kind of line item in some larger, boring company's balance sheet? Like, why is this not the cultural commons that it should have been? Um, so we made this map of showing the ownership within music industry, this Ouroboros of everyone having some kind of stake in each other. And it really only takes like 1 or 2 degrees of separation to get to Morgan Stanley, BlackRock. Like you have the big three major labels here. Um, it's it's pretty bleak, to be honest. Like when you see it as like a whole system. Um, so our view, and I think our like frustration with the broader kind of solutions that we've seen is that many of them are very surface level and systems level problems needs systemic solutions. And so like we have to go beyond virtue signaling or like identity politics to say like because someone is a plays guitar that they will be a better capitalist than the capitalist that doesn't play guitar. Um, that good intentions are not good enough. Like I think that's one Bandcamp is such an illustrative case study where good intentions didn't matter. Like the character virtue of founders didn't matter. Bandcamp Fridays demonstrating some level of corporate benevolence doesn't matter. Marketing as being artist friendly doesn't matter. And so what is the solution? It has to be some kind of deeper systems level intervention. So like what we're arguing for is artists not being artist friendly, but actually owned and controlled by artists. And when you get into ownership, you have kind of the way that we're approaching this is that like the tech world has often viewed innovation through a technical lens. There's some kind of leap in a technical advancement that allows for some kind of disruption. But in this case, I don't think the solution is actually not technical. It's how people organize and it's how the actual business logic and incentives are rewired. And so when you get into these questions, there's a lot that comes up. Um, and I feel like this is the design space where real innovation can take shape now because the all of these questions here kind of point to the real problems. And so, we have an essay in the zine called A Crisis of Imagination. And when we outlined our competition, we didn't name any companies. Like what we are really competing against is people just not believing that artist ownership is even possible in the first place. And so, yeah, we need to like actually touch the nerves of the system of ownership and value and control. And Eric Olin Wright has this diagram that I really like, which is criteria for evaluating social alternatives. which is three of them. Like one, is it desirable? Like, is this something people want? Would people prefer to have a version of Bandcamp that is owned and controlled by its community? The answer to that is yes. I haven't heard anyone say that that shouldn't exist. Then the next question is it viable? Like, is that even possible? Many people get stuck here. They don't think that it is possible. And so like that's one way that we want to prove people wrong. And then the third is it achievable? Like can we do it? Can like this group of people do it, let alone is it possible? And so what we really want to do is change the culture of startups by just showing that this is possible. Because then what is the argument against cooperative platforms? If we can win in a market context by showing it's a better business, that this is actually what people desire, and if you can show that it's possible and the desire is there, then I think that we can win. And so for us, it's been about how to do that. Like co-op platforms don't really have a great track record for success. So it's understandable why people are skeptical and don't believe that this can work. But so yeah, our kind of mission goes beyond like building a version of an existing platform that is collectively owned, but we want to demonstrate a replicable model moving forward. That the way that we are doing this is a way that can challenge a landscape of incumbents, like a way to make a landscape of incumbent legacy enterprises and platforms start to feel very vulnerable in their position because there can suddenly be a way that is viable for communities to create their own platforms. And the way that we've done this is kind of simple, but it's a little bit of like a twist on the implementation of cooperative platforms so far. And the way that we are doing this is we all know what co-ops are. The way that this is our zine, by the way. We have like this animation. So the way that we're doing this is we have two legal entities, and this is like where our kind of organizational innovation comes from. We have our co-op exists of now 6,500 members, and that co-op owns 100% of a corporation. And that corporation is actually what we've used to fundraise. So we just announced a $650,000 funding round. And so I can explain more about that structure, but what we're basically trying to do is kind of mitigate the limitations of both models while harnessing the strengths of both. And so what we are trying to do is achieve a way to fundraise while also maintaining the integrity of cooperative governance of our platform and operations. So every member that joins gets this too. Like we're trying to like really connect the experience of ownership and make it like design an experience around it that people can emotionally connect with and understand and feel the value of. So this is something that we, when an artist signs up, we offer to send this for free to them. So this membership certificate with our zine. This is what the platform looks like. It's actually a little bit, this is like an older version, but this is an example of an artist page, an album, or release page, and what a user would see when they were looking at their library of music that they have collected or purchased. We have a very active member forum too. So we've gone old school. We have a forum. We don't use Discord or anything. I love having an old school forum because the conversation's a little slower and people write longer, more thoughtful responses, and you can check it once a day or once a week, and I think you can still keep up. So really enjoyed this, and this is something that will continue to evolve as like a way that ideas can organically surface and turn into priorities of the co-op. We also did this, like each person joining, has joined with their location of where they are. And so we were able to actually plot this out accurately across the world. This was at 5,000 members, so there's now more than this, but it's global. It's global by nature, and that's very intentional too. So we have members from 70 different countries. I think maybe 71 now. And so I personally really want to prioritize reaching parts of the world that have not been prioritized before. Like I was in Bogota a few months ago, and just talking to people about how they felt platforms have like spoken to them, or even like tried to reach areas of Latin America specifically. And so I want to make sure that this is seen as like an international network for solidarity more than it is a New York startup. Like that's something that's very, very important to me. So I mentioned before, these are kind of like the two ways to join as a member. And so thank you, Michael, for joining. That's appreciated. And we have a board of directors too. We actually just held elections. So I'm a worker member of the co-op. We have we have three worker members. So me and Sean Adams are two worker members on the board. And we have two artists members on the board. And then and then one label representative, one supporter. So we have six right now. We started with three. We held an election for three more. In a year, we'll have an election for three more to fill out our 9-seat board, and then we'll do it again. We'll have 3 seats up for election every year in staggered terms. And yeah, here's a comparison that's just meant to illustrate for people the kind of deeper ways that you can contrast these two services. Like, beyond fees or features, like what does it actually mean if something is owned by its community rather than privately owned by investors or corporate parent company? So I mentioned before that our model is a corporation owned by a cooperative, or a cooperative that owns a corporation. I work for the co-op. The co-op is where all the people are, and where like the actual management and day-to-day of the platform is. And I can drop a link in after the presentation, but we also published a Miro board, so you can like scroll around and see all the agreements and an explanation of how all the agreements actually work with each other. And then this diagram at the bottom, which shows like how does money flow through this. So yeah, I've been a part of cooperatives in the past. I was a founder of a early cooperative platform experiment called Ampled, and I experienced a lot of challenges with that project, namely funding, and so many things that were downstream of funding challenges. And it's not unique to platforms specifically, but that's part of the reason for designing this. Was platforms are very expensive, especially consumer-facing startups. Like people have very high expectations for those, and also like it's a worker cooperative. We want workers to not feel unsafe or like experience precarity like that I did working with Ampled. Like it was very, very hard. Like I actually wouldn't wish that kind of like pain or uncertainty on other people. Like I just felt like there has to be a better way to start these organizations rather than asking workers to suffer for it because it's like more virtuous. So it felt important from the start to say, we have to figure out how to fund this. Let's just make a rule that there's no unpaid labor too. Um, and um, yeah, and let's build like an experience around ownership that people like intuitively understand. So our this is our big picture aim is to be the Mondragon of music. So Mondragon is the largest cooperative in the world. It's in the Basque region of Spain. They started in 1956 as a home appliance manufacturing company, started by a Catholic priest after the Spanish Civil War. And what I find fascinating about Mondragon is what started in the 50s as a single company has grown today to they have their own bank now. They have their own university. They have their own chain of grocery stores. They have a construction company. Like there's this range of over 90 different cooperatives under the umbrella of Mondragon, which is effectively organized an entire region of northern Spain under community ownership. And all of those separate businesses that sound like they're not related to each other are all related because they exist to meet members' needs. These are services that the community needs, and so that's why Mondragon offers these services. Um, and so what we've imagined is a 50-year roadmap where just like Mondragon has expanded into services that meet the needs of its members, what we have thought is just as we are a co-op that owns a corporation now, um, that corporation holds like the code and ownership of the platform itself, and it basically licenses that to the co-op. What we could do, that co-op can also own other things. That co-op can own other businesses. Us as a co-op can acquire businesses. Like they can spin out from within our network. And our agreements that we've set up in between these two legal entities basically can work as a kind of legal and organizational protocol for how the co-op can start to own other things. So the way that we've been thinking about it in our bigger vision is that the platform that we're building now is kind of like a social and economic engine. So the more people that join this platform, the larger the co-op gets. And so the co-op is 6,500 people now, but that could easily be hundreds of thousands or millions of people worldwide organized within a self-governing legal container. And that to me feels like the most powerful thing, like more powerful than building a collectively owned Bandcamp. Because from there, I feel like we can actually start to build what can be like not just like a better version of a platform that people feel like has utility, but a totally new alternative economy that's owned by independent music as a community. And yeah, these are our cities. This is an older screenshot, so we have a lot more now. I think we're over 300 members in Berlin, which is fantastic. I was there all of June and got to meet a bunch of members. We're gonna have our first member meetup in Montreal. We have, I think, over 120 members in Montreal now. So that'll be next month. Um, yeah, that's the presentation. So yeah, I would love to happy to answer any questions and grateful for y'all showing up. And uh, so Michael has already done this, but obviously this is open for anyone to participate. So I'd love to invite anyone to become a member. And then I'd also love ideas to grow presence in St. Louis. Like, how can we get St. Louis on the board here?
I feel like 28 is a reasonable number to beat. We can beat Vienna. Like, we got this. Thank you,
Is my
Austin. That
screen
was
still
so
sharing or did we stop?
Stop.
no, stop. I'm gonna
Okay,
share
cool.
mine now. Um, but yeah, that was really inspiring, super cool, to learn more, not only just about how sort of like it's working, what you're doing, but also like the bigger picture and the vision. Awesome to see there at the end. We did have a couple questions come in while you were presenting, so I'm going to kick off with those.
Hmm.
Um, but if anybody has questions as we're talking, put them in the chat, or if you want to just come off mute, if you just put a question mark in the chat, we'll kind of go in order of the questions coming in. So the first one that came in while you were chatting was, is the funding round all debt-based, slash no equity?
The funding is actually done with a safe note, which is pretty typical of actually normal startups. And that's actually the investment's done through our corporation, not the co-op. So it actually is equity based. The way that that works is basically the way that I've explained it is it's um, it's as if a startup has one founder. So imagine Jenny, you start a startup. You're the only person working on it. There's no employee options pool. There's no anyone else. You just have 100% of the pie as the company gets started. And you find an investor. And what would happen then is if like that investor would get new preferred shares, likely. And so basically your share of the pie would get slightly diluted once the investor comes in. And so what we are the way that Subvert's model works is kind of intentionally familiar to people that are used to investing like that. But our one founder is the co-op, basically. The co-op owns all of the founding shares of this corporation. And so what what that means is that we can fundraise and still maintain control. Um, but what it does is slightly dilute us from the corporation. So we still maintain full control over our own democratic um, like decision making of the platform itself. Um, and we kind of even set like a filter for investors that are okay making like sometimes uncomfortable concessions for the way that this works. So we're even planning things like if we do a future funding round, setting up the kind of like God shares for the co-op in the corporation, like Mark Zuckerberg has at Meta, basically. Like Mark Zuckerberg shares have what 10x the voting power of other people's in this dual class system that they've set up, and so we could do something similar. That's what I want us to do. Um, and so the goal is to set up a scenario where the co-op can use this corporation to raise funding, and that corporation basically pays the co-op to develop and maintain the platform. But we can do that in a way that maintains the integrity of cooperative governance of the platform and operations, but also is set up to safeguard against the co-op ever losing control of the corporation. So it allows investors to participate more in like a financial upside way um, than having control like from like a governance perspective. And these are all like very nuanced questions. I feel like when you get into the weeds of trying to figure out how to build something like this that can actually take off and be successful, like this is like a very careful slicing of trade-offs that we find to be acceptable, like when it comes to like a pragmatic way of thinking through how to actually even give this a chance of success. And so I feel good about the way that it's set up, but it is a little nuanced and it isn't like a pure cooperative. It is almost like a cooperative is a startup founder in a way. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. This is Yoni's question, and I think he had a follow-up based on
Mhm.
what you were saying, which was like, are the founding shares are the voting shares?
So there's
Is that
governance within there's different governance within each of these legal entities. So our co-op is just like a um, same as like the co-op tradition of one member, one vote, right? So the co how the co-op governs itself is still one member, one vote. And so as an example, we just held board elections through the co-op. And the the board members that are elected by the co-op also then by proxy of that serve as board members on the corporation. And
Mm,
so the corporation's governance is based on like stake weight. So the co-op owns significantly more of that corporation, so the corporation or the co-op has governance control over that entity, if that
mm.
makes sense.
Can I jump?
Yeah, it feels like it kind of ping pongs back and forth a bit of like how they relate to each other. Like you
Yeah,
said, it's
we've
very
kind of like
nuanced.
mapped out like what each entity is actually in charge of. So like when it comes to building and running the platform, that's within the co-op. Like when it comes to hiring and firing and like actual staff, that's within the co-op too. So the corporation is really almost like a IP holding company. Like there's no day-to-day staff that work there. It's almost like higher level uh higher level strategy and stewardship of the platform's code in a way.
Yeah. I think Yoni, if you had, yeah, like a follow-up or wanted clarification, feel free to come off mute and ask.
Cool.
Pretending.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for this presentation, Austin. Really interested in what you're working on. So my understanding is the um, outside investors, non-co-op members, um, will dilute the co-op's membership over time as they put more and more money into the corporate entity they're investing in. And then the governance of the corporation is stake weighted. So is it not possible or likely that eventually investor board members will or investors will have like a majority share of the corporation when they put in enough money to outweigh whatever the co-op share is, and then have majority board membership of the corporation?
Yeah, it's a right question to ask, and that's exactly what we're kind of setting up safeguards to prevent. So So something like that is possible in that if without safeguards after several funding rounds, like the founding share of the pie often gets diluted to less than half. And so that's why I mentioned instituting a dual class voting structure within that corporation so
Got it.
that the co-op's votes can have like a multiple
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
weight against
That
the
makes sense.
investors. And
Yeah.
it's not even that hard of a pitch to investors that believe in this because like I feel like for an investor to come on board, they have to actually believe that democratic governance is what makes this significantly more likely to succeed. That if that many more people are invested and have pride in this thing, then that's actually what is the secret sauce. And so, if there's ever a scenario where an investor would want to overrule what the community wants to do, that would just destroy all the value we've built and all the value that that investor has invested in. So it's like there is no scenario where I feel like it even makes sense for an investor to want to overrule the community. And so like that's that I think is just built into the model of like why someone would invest. It's not to take over because I feel like if that's the case, then again, we will have failed. I will resign. Like it's like we just go home. Like it's not worth doing it anymore. And so I think like part of the purpose is to set expectations from the start. And that makes fundraising much more difficult. We actually just posted a blog about how we had to turn down and part ways with an investor who didn't fully understand what we were doing. So that cost us 200 grand. Like they wanted a voting board seat, and we're just explaining that's
Mm.
not how this works. And they
Our
kind of
program.
like after agreeing to invest, pushed for that as like a condition and sort of just said, no, it won't work. And so I feel like we're doing the work to set those tough like those conditions now, just to set like this is what this is. And we believe that we can find people that believe in that by showing that this can work. Um, and so yeah, it's different. It's different from what investors are typically used to. But I think like we have to make sure that they believe in like the whole uncompromised vision. Or else again, it's not even good for an investor to like supersede the will of this community.
Yeah. This kind of ties into sort of that, yeah, fundraising piece. This next question of like, also from Yoni of like and I feel like maybe you answered this a little bit in some of your other responses, but like, what are the limitations on co-ops raising funds or do anything else that have made having a separate subordinate corporation desirable? Like, can co-ops raise debt on their own? But it seems like some of
Um,
it is like in the governance structure a little bit. I don't know.
yeah, it none of it's a one size fits all thing. Like I feel like if you're starting a cooperative bakery, debt financing makes a ton of sense. Like if you can find that, in this kind of space of like the in tech, these platforms are like although it's easier than it has been in the past, they're very expensive to build. These are extremely risky investments. There's no there's no co-op credit union that's going to finance Subvert. Like I've tried. It's just like a different kind of class of investment, really. And so I feel like this is geared more towards um yeah, like a web-based startup. But that
Yeah.
doesn't preclude other alternative funding methods either. Like I feel like the door is still open and I would very much want to encourage things like crowdfunding, like even like equity crowdfunding as we've done investments or um yeah, or even like community bonds, like raising debt from the community. There's a lot of alternative options and we want to keep all of those on the table. But I think a lot of the purpose of this structure was so that we could find more of like a sufficient quantity that wouldn't have been available in any other way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It seems very responsive to like, your specific entity's needs.
Hmm.
But cool to see as an opportunity for a model for other like, ideas to use too, other
Yeah,
co-ops.
it almost feels like across the cooperative landscape that if there is any one problem to solve, it is for funding. But so many of the
Mm.
other problems really are just downstream of starving for resources, you know?
Yeah,
And so like we just view an underfunded subvert as not something that benefits anybody. It doesn't benefit artists to trust a platform that may break or just not be maintained in a year because it's part-time volunteer labor building it. It doesn't serve the workers when they have to endure all these opportunity costs, time, uncertainty, like no like lack of compensation. It's
yeah,
like let's 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 treat this as like there isn't any trade-off. We shouldn't have to make a trade-off between people just being paid what they should be paid and working on something that they care about.
totally. I think this next question from Zandi, and Zandi, feel free to chime in, maybe was answered a little bit in describing how the investment works, but does the split entity structure enable a separation between investment and decision making, would you say?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, like as an example, um, the decisions within the co-op, changing bylaws, electing board members, like all of that stuff is done independent of investment. But everyone that has put in money, it's 6 people. Um, all of them were existing members before.
Mm.
So they also can participate like in a kind of one member, one vote basis as well. So there isn't really like even that clear of a distinction between them because they're the folks that did invest in the corporation are also co-op members. And so they're like they're in the member forum, they're it's not like an adversarial relationship. It's like these two entities are kind of like us shaking hands with each other because like we own it. We own we we all own the co-op. The co-op owns this corporation. And the people that have invested in the corporation are also co-op members. So it is, yeah, it doesn't, there's not really that like an adversarial relationship between the two. It's like very much like it's just kind of organized differently, but like it's the same people.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Zani had another question of like, how do you think about the information you gain from the mistakes made in prior co-op experience, like Ampled, and how does that inform what you're doing now? And like, what do the mistakes and learnings mean, like for the greater co-op community too, do you feel?
Yeah, I I can find a link to it. But I gave a presentation at New School called Lessons from Failed Platform Co-ops. And so I feel like I've been thinking more from the platform context about failures. Um, and I mean, we haven't had that many at bats either,
Mm.
and like one thing that I like to say, there's examples like Ample or Resonate that weren't runaway financial successes. Maybe they were too early. Um, But there's like a suite of reasons why other projects may not have worked. Like it could be focus or execution or the actual product itself or marketing or communications. Like it's basically all the same reasons that a normal business can fail, like extend to co-ops. And so it's like to me, it's almost like saying that just because a neighborhood diner went out of business, that restaurants can't work. And so like I just fully reject that there's if anyone has the assumption that cooperative platforms can't work. Like the incentive alignment is there. I think it just takes a design to bring it out. So that's where a lot of the learnings have been from is is so many things like funding that we mentioned earlier, but I think also an experience and design of ownership that like intuitively and emotionally connects with people. Like if ownership is a way, it can be designed in a way that actually helps a platform grow and help people develop like a deep affinity and trust for something and true agency and power within it. And I feel like that's unstoppable, but I also feel like that hasn't been done well yet. And so I think there's just a massive design space around how to design experiences around ownership, especially ones that are kind of built into a platform. That that's like an that's like a fully underdeveloped like set of UX considerations, which we find really exciting. So every member of Subvert has an ownership dashboard, and that to us feels like an area where that's where we want the kind of magic moment of the platform to be, where you click on that and you're like, oh, this is different. Like, oh, I get it. Like, oh, I'm glad to be a member. This is so cool. That's what we're looking to do. So there is like a longer presentation about those. I think you could Google it. It was at the Platform Cooperativism Consortium,
Cool.
lessons from
Yeah,
failed platform co-ops.
we can get that and we'll send it like in a follow-up email for everybody, some resources. That would be awesome.
Mhm.
I know as you were talking, Yoni was saying that it's a great point, the way more conventional startups have, like way more conventional startups have failed than succeeded.
Mhm.
And that's the kind of the risk, the profile of startups. Most fail. Same, Chris said, like most businesses fail. It's risky no matter what. Um, and Michael was saying that, yeah, just the part that you said about intuitively and emotionally connecting with people, that seems very exciting and important.
Yeah, one
We
other lesson that I've taken is um like Ample as an example was a kind of Patreon for music like platform. And what was challenging then was at the time, 20 back in go back to 2019, 2020, musicians weren't familiar or accustomed to this idea of ongoing subscription support for content. And it actually turns out it's not really that great of a category for that kind of model. I mean, it's actually been a declining model for years on Patreon. Not only has it not grown like the music category, but it's been shrinking because artists have been abandoning their pages. And so I found a challenge in trying to do two things at once with Ample. It was really challenging to encourage a new kind of behavior. Like you've never created a kind of subscription-based patronage uh, initiative. You've never like developed ongoing content in this way, but you should try it. It's like a new behavior. You should try this new behavior. And also it's built on this new model. And you have to like understand this thing too. And
Mhm.
so like one takeaway for me is I feel like at this point you have to choose one or the other. It's like you encourage a new behavior, like you're some kind of novel interaction for people, or you develop this kind of like innovative model underneath the business. Doing both at the same time is so much to communicate that it's really, really difficult. And so that it kind of was baked into the initial idea for Subvert. Like, let's tie it to something that people know and understand. Like, let's make it super simple to communicate. Like Nikita Beer tweeted out this idea that if you're building a consumer startup and you can't explain it, or if other people can't explain it in 5 words or less, you're going to fail. And so we just simplified from the start. It's 4 words: collectively owned Bandcamp successor. Like something that people like can immediately grok, immediately intuitively just get it. And And then the ownership makes sense in that context because also ownership was the problem.
Mhm.
Like ownership created the problem. So it makes sense for ownership to be the solution there. So I feel like, yeah, it's not a one size fits all value proposition yet. And until like a cooperative platform is more widely understood as like a default option, then my feeling is that the next wave of successful cooperative platforms will just be almost like challenging existing incumbents, like with a kind of like familiar, like iteratively improved platform, but with far better incentives economics built through collective ownership.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, Especially like you're saying, trying to teach, or I don't know, yeah, convert people to two new ideas at once is a lot.
Mhm.
And you guys really figured out a very succinct way to simplify that for words. I have a question. I think kind of Chris and I have a similar one. I'm gonna try to combine it into one, but like, um, in terms of, I know you were saying before you have like over 6,000 members and you want to get to 10,000 by October, I think. And I'm wondering like what what it looks like for y'all to recruit new members. And like Chris's question was sort of around this too of like, how do you introduce Subvert to artists who've never heard of it? And also for us to know like how can we help like make people aware of these like possible alternatives?
That's a good question. So it's been mostly through digital means right now. Um, like we've tested some advertisements, which have actually worked extremely well. I think because once people discover that something like this exists, there's like a deep curiosity, and it kind of like answers a question that people have been, or it feels like something that people find desirable. But also word of mouth. I mean, we're the next phase for us is just a whole suite of things that we'll be working on. I think like easy referrals, even ways to track and attribute referrals, so we can like incentivize and reward members for onboarding other members, making it really easy for folks to broadcast their membership. So every time we send out one of these now, we begin including like a little card that says like it's like instructions. Um, take a picture of this, post it on Instagram, tag us. Like this action, this simple action helps us grow our cooperative network. And so like that's one example that, it's not all we're working on developing a lot of these. So I almost don't have all the answers right now, but in the future, we do want to equip every member with the ability to be an effective ambassador. I think that can take many shapes. It could be like a library of assets to post. It can be like a very easy link to copy and to send to people. Easy ways to share on social media. Um, yeah, all of the above. So just like we're just, you know, when it comes to these growth strategies, like right now, the priority for us is to fulfill the promise of launching the platform. So that's kind of like focus number one. But I think once the platform is live, we will kind of pivot towards really thinking about like, let's bring a lot more people in. And by the way, a lot of people don't want to join until there is something to click on. And I totally understand that too. So I feel like it's going to open the possibility for a lot more people to join, and it's going to make it easier for members to be an ambassador when they can just send the real thing. Just say like sign up and make a page.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I was gonna say we have about like 5, 10 more minutes for questions. So I wanted to make sure if anyone else in the room has any questions to put
We
them
have
in the
Josh.
chat.
Josh
Yeah.
here. What is the best way to get involved as a tech worker in the space, either with Subvert or cooperatively run tech platforms in general? That's a good question. Well, when it comes to Subvert, it's been interesting because there's been probably over 100 developers that have reached out, been interested, but we've actually kind of pumped the brakes a little bit, um, just because that doesn't actually help you launch something faster. If you throw more people at it, especially when it comes to software. And we want to uphold the rule of no unpaid labor too. That's not just like a kind of value-based virtue. It also just means that we want to uphold a kind of like standards and accountability of what it means to do work for the company. Um, but what we are saying is uh, also want to have a practice of any contract or full-time opportunities, members get first look. And so like people that have been involved with the community are like first in line when opportunities come up. Um, when it comes to like the space more generally, I don't know. I think there are groups that do have like a more volunteer based um way of building. Um I think it's just like any space, it's just entering these dialogues and conversations and seeing like where the people are, just chatting with them. And I think there's there's likely many ways to contribute. Um, I think it just would depend on each specific group. But yeah, I would look at like sometimes these are more academic spaces, but I think like just being in conversation with folks is probably like the best way, like to open up potential opportunities or even just to learn more. I hope that's helpful. But also you like Josh, feel free to email me too if there's anything specific that you're thinking about.
Yeah, Yoni, if you want to come off mute and ask a live question, please do.
Thanks. I put this in the chat a while ago, but it's kind of in the weeds, and I'm happy to read the zine, so I'm kind of pivoting it to like, does the zine answer the following question? Or can you answer it quickly live? No problem if not. You've talked about like the licensing agreement between the corporation and the co-op. And I wasn't fully following like which part owns what, and does that mean the co-op has to pay the corporation annually for the tech, and like how's the co-op getting enough money to do that? Which thinking about all that made me just be like, I really need to understand the business and revenue model more, like who's paying what in, where's the money coming from, how's that flowing between the entities? So does the zine get into all of that?
Um, it does, but I think I just dropped a link that is going to explain that even better.
Oh,
So
great.
this is the Miro board is in the chat, and that is a like very comprehensive like zoomed out view of the entire model, and then you can actually click into each agreement and read each agreement and see a description of how everything works together.
That's amazing. I think it's so cool that you guys are making that so transparent. And as a wonky co-op business model design, finance design person, I'm excited to peruse that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and Yoni, as much as you want to dig into it, also the comments are open on these
Oh,
docs too.
cool. Sweet. Very cool.
Yeah. The goal is to think about open sourcing the through like less through the technical lens, but open source all of our organizational and legal documents. The idea is if people find it valuable, if this is like one approach to maybe, I mean, I think it'd be challenging to find a, a an application that would make sense to like wholesale adopt what we've put together, but it could serve as inspiration or like get someone like 70% of the way there if they're looking to do something similar. So our goal is to take all of the work we're doing and just openly share it. Like that means that,
That's how co-ops win. Lawyers are
yeah,
expensive. If you can cut those legal costs by 70%, that's a big competitive advantage.
yep, for sure.
And
Yeah,
in the early startup phase anyway.
But yeah, I feel like if we can help show again that this is something that can work and that will other startups look at co-ops differently if they see it not as like naive political protest projects, but as like scary businesses, like as like businesses that are dangerous to incumbents, as like a deep, a deep and unique competitive advantage, then yeah, then maybe these resources can be valuable to people. And I feel like the future of cooperative platforms I would like to see is even just less folks that are, I mean, there's a lot of like folks with like very developed, mature politics in the space. Like they've read the theory, they have strong opinions, like critiques of capitalism, and like what brought like those ideas, like card-carrying DSA members brought them to this idea of exploring cooperative platforms. But I also just like want to show that this stuff works. Like you don't have to be in those spaces or those conversations. Like there are plenty of people that are great community builders and like are in tune with this being something that they actually prefer, like would prefer to build a business like this. And so if those options are there, I think, yeah, I'd like to see more people just see this as like one of the menu of options that they have for starting a business. And less of it feeling more, yeah, explicitly kind of politically based in a way.
I think as an artist myself, I feel like starting or like looking at those opportunities within like artist communities um feels really ripe to like make it happen.
Hmm.
Like you said, just like sort of the everyday folks that care about these things and also like can envision something with like a creative lens. Uh
Hmm.
that's really cool.
Yeah, and
Um
art.coop plug in the
yeah,
chat. They've done such great work. I feel like they've done amazing work at just articulating a kind of philosophy around why cooperatives make sense within the arts.
cool. Austin, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. I hope everyone, I know everybody got a lot out of this. Um, and we're gonna kind of wrap up with a quick survey in the chat. The co-op Skillshares. This is the first time we're doing one virtually. We've done them like in person in St. Louis before. So I just wanted to see for the folks that are here, if you like this format, having kind of our guest presenter, being able to dig into these co-op structures and skills from around. If you want to put a number in the chat, that would be great. We'll take a minute for that. Um, We'll also follow up after the workshop and after the event and share some of the resources that were put in the chat so you have those forever. Um, and it sounds like everyone should become a member of Subvert, so that's cool. We should do that, get our zine. Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Hope this was a good start to your Saturday mornings. One other quick note. We have our next program is coming up in August, on August 14th. So it's part of our Cooperative Foundation series. But this topic is launching a new co-op. So if you're, thinking about starting something new, you want to do it with a co-op structure, we'll talk about sort of what that like path looks like. So if you or someone you know is interested in that, please spread the word. And I think Zani just dropped some of that info in the chat and links. Yeah. Is there any last thoughts? If anyone wants to come off mute, feel free. I'll give another shout out to Austin for being here. And we're gonna, yeah, start thinking about, I think Yoni said to come to St. Louis and come to Music at the Intersection, a big like music event that we have.
When is that?
Can show you. It's September 12th through 14th. There's like national acts that come to it, but also a lot of local folks. But we
There's
have,
someone named Mastermind who is a local musician who runs something called Master Camp, I think. Or I don't know if anyone else has the details more accurately than me. But anyway, happy to connect offline and like connect you to specific local musicians who are more tapped in there. Because then
Yeah.
I think you could, if you connected with the musicians here, I think a lot of them are. I mean, I'm sure you find this with all musicians probably, but I think people would be very down, and the people on this call could help you connect to those people who would be more directly the people you want to talk to in terms of getting more local artists, etc.
For sure. Yeah, I will be out of town during that time, which is unfortunate, but I do want to make it to St. Louis. I've never been. Um, but during that time, I'm
Honestly, it might be good
visiting.
to come a different time too, because then people be less busy, and you could organize a meetup
Mhm.
and get
we can
more
take
time
you
with
around to
people.
all the music venues, all the local owned ones.
Sophie's
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I'm visiting Mondragon at that time. Actually, I'm like
amazing.
going there. Um, so I feel like that's like a little co-op pilgrimage, which I'm excited about.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to do about as much reading as I can before I go there.
Are you going with
Awesome.
a group or just? Like a
Yeah,
tour?
it's like a group of um folks representing different co-ops in the US, and also Jessica Gordon Nimhard, who wrote the book collection Collective Courage, is going to.
Cool. Well, hopefully you can give us a little report back, or there'll be a blog post or something about it on Subvert. We'll join the
Yeah,
forum.
yeah. I might start a personal newsletter related to that
Okay. Yeah, keep us in the loop.
for sure.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for being here. Um, oh wait. Oh, nice. Sandy said she sat next to Jessica at a co-op conference and didn't realize it. Oh wait, was that in Chicago? Was I with you? And we were like, wait, is that Jessica?
Yeah.
She's like a little superstar or a big superstar of co-op.
Cool. Thank you
Cool.
again.
Yeah, thanks y'all. Enjoy the rest of your
So much for doing this with
Saturday.
us.
All right. Bye.
Yeah.